Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, and 9 o'clock is with me, Father Warner. And today we celebrate the feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica. Our text today at the Liturgy of the Eucharist is John chapter 2, verse 13 to 22. And I'd like you to read that whenever you have some time. But I'd like to explain today what exactly we are celebrating. So today the church celebrates the feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica, which is in Rome. This is the oldest and the highest ranking of the four major basilicas in Rome. The Basilica of St. John Lateran is the cathedral of the Diocese of Rome. It's the official ecclesiastical seat of the Holy Father, the Bishop of Rome, and not St. Peter's Basilica. So many people think that if you ask them which is the church of the Holy Father, which is his headquarters, they will say his headquarters is St. Peter's. No, the headquarters of the Catholic Church is the Vatican City, but the cathedral of the Pope is not St. Peter's Basilica, but it is St. John's Lateran, which is one of those four major basilicas. St. Peter is one of them, the other Santa Maria Maggiore, and the other is St. Paul's Cathedral outside the walls, St. Paul's Basilica, which is outside the walls. So four of them, Santa Maria Maggiore, which is very close to Termini, for those who have ever been to Rome, the main railway station. Then you have St. Paul's outside the walls, just beyond Piramide, if ever you've traveled there. Then you have St. Peter's, which is in the Vatican, and then you have St. John Lateran. It's a beautiful, beautiful basilica. Now, St. John Lateran was built in the time of Constantine, and it was consecrated by Pope Sylvester in the year 324. Originally, it was consecrated to Christ the Redeemer, but then there was a massive earthquake which destroyed much of the church in the year 896 AD. So the church then was rebuilt by Pope Sergius III, and he dedicated it to St. John the Baptist. That's why when you go and see the church, right on the top on the facade is St. John the Baptist. Now, in ancient Rome, this was the church where everyone was baptized. It was during the reign of Emperor Constantine that the laws restricting the practice of the church's faith were removed from Roman law. And the church went from being an illegal cult. So prior to Constantine, you could not even worship God as a Christian. So it went on from being an illegal cult whose profession of faith was considered even to be an act of treason, to becoming the favored religion of the Roman emperor. It was the Edict of Milan that finally gave Christians the ability to practice their faith, and all of this was thanks to the Emperor Constantine. Now, the present basilica stands on the site of an ancient palace on the Caelian Hill. So Rome has 7 famous hills, and the Caelian Hill is one of these 7 hills of Rome, and this place formerly belonged to the family of the Laterani. That's why it's called St. John Lateran. Yeah, the Laterani family owned it. Now, this palace was really part of the dowry of Fausta, who was the wife of the Emperor Constantine. And Constantine gave it to the church when he converted a portion of the Laterani palace to serve as the papal residence. So the first papal residence was St. John Lateran. The residence behind the church was the residence of the Pope. Now, today our liturgy celebrates the dedication of the Lateran Basilica. It's called the mother and the head of the churches of the city and of the world. Now, initially, the observance of this feast was only confined to the city of Rome, and then somewhere in 1565, this celebration liturgically was extended to all the churches of the Roman Rite as a sign of love for the union that we all share with the See of Peter. Pope Benedict XVI in his Angelus address on November 9th in the year 2008 said that this feast celebrates a mystery that is always relevant. God's desire to build a spiritual temple in the world, a community that worships Him in spirit and truth. He was referring to John chapter 4 verse 23 to 24. But this observance also reminds us of the importance of the material buildings in which the community gathers to celebrate the praise of God. Every community therefore has the duty, I'm going to say this again, every community has the duty to take care of its own sacred buildings, which are a precious religious and historical patrimony. For this we call upon the intercession of Mary Most Holy, that she helps us to become like her, she who was the house of God, the living temple of His love. The Gospel of today, my dear friends, is taken, as I said, from John chapter 2. This episode of the cleansing of the temple is placed right at the beginning of John's Gospel, immediately after the wedding feast of Cana. Unlike Matthew, Mark and Luke, in John's Gospel, wedding feast of Cana gets over and Jesus cleanses the temple. This is quite different from the synoptic Gospels, who place the incident, as I said, at the end of Jesus' ministry, and in Mark's Gospel it appears in chapter 12, even Matthew's Gospel right to the end. And really in Matthew, Mark and Luke, the cleansing of the temple is really seen as an inevitable consequence of Jesus' death. His cleansing of the temple caused the Jewish authorities to turn against him. This was like the straw that broke the camel's back. John, when you look at the narrative of the cleansing of the temple in chapter 2, adds many more details to the incident. He will write about the sheep and the oxen along with the doves, which is not mentioned in the synoptics. He has Jesus make a whip out of a cord, and then has Jesus turn to address the dove sellers separately as he overturns their tables too. In John's Gospel, unlike Matthew, Mark and Luke, it will be the raising of Lazarus that sets in motion the last nail of hatred in the intention of the Jews to put Jesus to death. So you see the focus of writing these Gospels, Matthew, Mark and Luke, and that's why they're called synoptics, which means seeing together. They are similar. They are quite different from John. So John's presentation of Jesus is quite different. Remember, the Gospels are not biographies. They're not to tell us that on so-and-so day Jesus got up, on so-and-so day he did this. They are post-resurrection faith narratives. They are a theology. Yeah? So they're not meant to tell us, it's not written in biographical style. So we have to ask ourselves also, why does this evangelist narrate this incident so differently from the other three? Now, commercialization of religion is a dangerous business. But it is not what the story is all about, that Jesus walked into the temple and didn't like the commercialization of the temple. Many people tell me sometimes, Father, outside our churches we have all these stalls and they are selling all these things and you priests must stop them. I want to tell you that very often anything outside our church we have no control over. It is all controlled by a powerful lobby, and may I dare say by people within the municipality, and if I may even dare say by collective mafia. Yeah, we have very little to do about it, so please stop pointing. Every time you have an ire or a pet peeve, please don't direct it to the priests. Very often it's not in our control. All of these, as you know, in most cities across the world are controlled sometimes, and I'm using the word very loosely, by a mafia of people. I'm not negating the fact that people earn their hard-earned living. I mean, very often there's another mafia controlling those people who earn their hard-earned money and often demand large amounts. But leave that aside, those are besides the point. Coming to John. John wants to make a point. We are told that the occasion for Jesus' presence in the temple is the Passover in the Gospel of John. It is but natural that the activities of commerce will go hand in hand with the activity of religion. You can't separate the two. You may not like it, but these two go. Where there is a feast, you will have several stalls selling in Bombay cardio video and whatever else you want, and there's a whole line of one group selling scapulars and somebody selling candles. The activity of religion and commerce go hand in hand. Having said that, the Jews of the diaspora, so when you speak of the diaspora, you mean the Jews who are not living in Jerusalem but in other cities. That's the meaning of the diaspora. The Jews of the diaspora and the Jews in the area who lived there were not allowed to bring in any graven image into the temple. And the coinage at that time, the coins that they had at that time, had on it the head of Caesar, or the image of Caesar was like you would have an image of Mahatma Gandhi on a coin. So in that time, Caesar's head was on the coin. But the fact that you had an image, you could not bring it into the temple because it was considered a graven image. Thus, the official currency of the country of occupation had to be exchanged for the Jewish currency, which was the shekel. And when you do a currency exchange, you always know that a fee was involved. So this explained the presence of the money changers in the temple. Now, much has also been said about the presence of the sellers of sheep, oxen or doves that were used also for the sacrifice. These birds and animals had to be, when they were offered, remember, they had to be offered without blemish. And it is held that many of the priests were actually in connivance with the sellers to sanction only the purchase of sacrificial animals from within the temple as fit for sacrifice. So if you say, I have my own sheep, my own goat, my own dove, I want to bring it to sacrifice, the priest would have said, no, it doesn't have the stamp of one of our approved licensed sellers. Yeah, go get only those that are sold, to give you a very bad comparison, only those that are sold in our candles sold in our church compound are good enough to be lit in St. Stephen's. That is how it would have been. Lots of corruption at that time. So, did all of this lead to the righteous anger of Jesus? Was this the reason why Jesus was really angry? Not really. You see, in the Gospel of John, Jesus is not acting against corruption, or at least he is not only acting, he's not only acting against corruption. And we know this because of Jesus' command to the dove sellers, which differs strikingly from the accounts in Matthew, Mark and Luke. Look at the text in Matthew chapter 21 from 12 to 13, Mark chapter 11 verse 15 to 19, Luke chapter 19 verse 45 to 48. Now, instead of a concern for temple malpractices, and the word is den of robbers, Jesus, and this is crucial, Jesus orders that his Father's house not be made into a marketplace. His Father's house not be made into a marketplace. The answer is in the first few words of Jesus when he calls the temple his Father's house. Jesus is redefining worship not merely as a place, not merely as the temple of Jerusalem, but in him. In chapter 4, he will get into a dialogue, as you will see with the Samaritan woman. See John chapter 4 verse 21, where he will reiterate the point and he will say to her, once again he will repeat this point to her, he will say, believe me, woman, the hour is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain of Samaria nor on that mountain in Jerusalem. Again, in John chapter 9 verse 35 to 38, when he heals the blind man who now can see, the response of the blind man is to what? He bows down, and you're right, he bows down and he worships Jesus. So in John's Gospel, the very physical body of Jesus is the new holy place, and Jesus is the new Jerusalem. Jesus' body is the temple which would be torn down by the Jews but raised up by the Father in 3 days. That's why he'll say, tear this temple down. He doesn't mean the structure, he means this, tear my body down. This is the point that John wants to make. So, is there a takeaway from all of this very long teaching today? Yes, most certainly. There's always some learning that we can take away. You know, we ask ourselves, is our spiritual resolve to worship Jesus? Is that our spiritual resolve to worship Jesus? Or do many of us sadly get caught up in what I call some temple ceremony? Is it the Lord that we really seek, or do we go to church to seek the incidentals of cultic practice? Now, don't make any mistake. I am not diminishing the role of cult, for cult gives expression to our inner disposition of faith. If I don't have an expression of cult, whether it's flowers or candles or whatever it may be, these are external expressions of what is going on inside. I take 2 candles and 2 flowers because I love Jesus and I have no other way of expressing it. This is my simple way of doing it. Cult is important. It gives expression to what is happening inside. The question that we need to ask is this: while cult is an integral part of worship, does it sometimes become for us greater than the reason behind the cult? And the reason behind the cult is Jesus himself. Have I forgotten Jesus over a period of time and now I'm more bothered about my 2 candles and 3 garlands? If that is the case, then we have missed the woods for the trees. It's been a long teaching. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have taught you John chapter 2 and the explanation of why Jesus goes into the temple and makes that whip and drives everybody out. And I've also explained to you the great feast that we celebrate, the feast of St. John Lateran. And today would be a wonderful day that we unite ourselves with the Mother Cathedral, St. John Lateran in Rome, and to our Holy Father. Please pray for Pope Francis. Pray that God may bless him with good health and continue to give him that loving heart. Just expand that beautiful loving heart that he has. I want to thank you for joining me each day, 9 o'clock with Father Warner. Thank you for your love, your kindness, and as soon as this video is over, we will acknowledge the donors towards the Love, Joy, Hope Foundation for children. God bless you for always caring for these children. I want to tell you that thanks to each one of you, for picking your wedding anniversary or your birthday or some celebration, sometimes even the remembrance of a loved one who's passed away. You share, I know many of you share your charity with Lenny and Nadia and the children of the Love, Joy, Hope. When you write to me, what I do is I send you their telephone number and you write to them, and then they will give you all the details of the bank transfers. Remember, everything is very transparent. It must be done by a bank transfer. They have an 80G facility, which means that you get 50% of your tax deduction. And this money is used, I can assure you, carefully. Sometimes we stretch that 1 meal into 2 meals also, but we do that with great joy. Our children are well looked after. I have seen Lenny take them each morning for athletic training. He himself trains all of them each morning. They sit down to breakfast, then they sit down with their books. Lenny and Nadia sit. Nadia teaches. She's a teacher. She teaches them. Lenny sits down with subjects like mathematics and science till sometimes late in the night. Some of our children come to us with no education. They are grown up, but they have no education, and we have to start from scratch. I want to tell you that Lenny drives the children to tuitions. He drives them to school. Our children are really loved, and we can do all of this thanks to your kindness. I want to also say this to you. Our children in the home have been taught to pray, and they all say beautiful spontaneous prayers. When we sit down for lunch and dinner and you have offered a meal, you are prayed for. Little children pray for you. So thank you for your kindness, and I pray that there may be many more Lenny and Nadia Sawarases, many of you who God moves your heart to take care of the least, the last and the lost. Have a happy feast and lots of love from me. Bye-bye.